Coach K. So it's right now? Good? Okay.
Yep.
Hey everyone, my name is Ashton Colby. I'm here with Coach K. We are both LGBTQ spiritual thought leaders, coaches, and we are here to really uplift you, have a great conversation, because now more than ever in this community, we need to know that there are possibility models beyond sometimes in this world where it gets dark, and we're here to, shine some light, talk about our experiences of living in this world, being LGBTQ, and how we have gone through our own spiritual awakenings in conservative religious backgrounds to expanding our understanding of God and spirit and coming into accepting ourselves. We're going to talk about tools to stay grounded at this time and have a beautiful, compassionate conversation that hopefully uplifts you. And we'll also talk about the intersections of identity with masculinity, with femininity, with me being a trans person, with Coach K being a lesbian and being Black, and my experience being a white trans man, and how that just shapes our experiences beyond the physical body. There's a lot going on internally and externally. So we'll get into it. I want to introduce Coach K. She is a beautiful spiritual leader and coach in this community. And she considers herself a soul speaker and travels and speaks to people and has firsthand experiences with 20 years in this community, understanding that as a queer person, religious suppression is real, and she has gone through her own spiritual understanding to really come out the other side and just be a light, and is a friend. And I want to know more and more and share her with this community that I have built with my trans community. And yeah, so let's just get into it. So I would love to hear about why now at this time is it so important that as LGBTQ people, we know that we're so much more than our bodies, we're so much more than our sexual identities, we're so much more than what we see here 3D day to day. We have to have this touchstone of a spiritual understanding of our own experience. Can you speak to your experience with that?
Oh no, thank you, Ashton. And this is, like I said, my good friend, and we could speak for hours on this. I'm gonna try to do my best in kind of condensing the thought. But like what I'm hearing from you is just that especially right now, we're in a crucial time. We are in a pandemic, but for some of us, we may very notice, okay, here, there's a spiritual something is going on, right?
Yeah.
And it is important for us, especially as a queer community, to kind of understand that, hey, that we're beyond our body. I think really what's going on right now, the universe is calling us to a higher understanding, a higher consciousness, a better understanding of love. And I think that's something unique that we have in the queer community, right? That our mantra is the freedom to love, right? And in each spectrum of the queer community, like what transgender, I'd love to say trans being, rather, being able to help us understand better that we're more than a body, right? We're not, we may have come in as an assigned person, but we want to match that intuition with, our internal self, with our external self, and that we're more than a body. So we're teaching people that we're more than a body. I know for myself as a gay woman, to be able to bring forth both masculine and feminine all in one space, and vice versa for a masculine man to have the femininity and to embrace that, we show that both reside in each other. The bisexual community, to be able to show that we're beyond gender. I'm really trying to get to the heart. I'm really trying to get to the spirit. And I think that's something that we are called at this moment, while this world is shifting, to really bring this forth. And while we're going through the shift, to say, hey, this is what it really means. This is what really life means. There's a higher power, whatever we call it, that's calling us to do something extraordinary in this time. So I think it's very important for us to kind of sit with ourselves and find our own way of how we can, be a voice of that. And I think for me, that's what kind of really sparked my passions to kind of really delve deep and get into the queer community, just through my own healing.
Yeah,
I
because we're really going through a spiritual awakening globally right now, and we, as LGBTQ people, we are getting at this kind of crux of gender and sexuality and these aspects of ourselves of knowing, like, okay, if I'm not my body and if I love somebody beyond the gender that I'm being told that I'm supposed to love, then there must be like this inner knowing that is deeper than it's less apparent. And we are, as a community, there is this resistance, that we're moving towards, where there is this conservative religious side of things that doesn't really understand or really see us as whole. They see us as somehow broken or missing something because we're deviating from the norm, when really, in a lot of ways, I think we're shining a lot of light on the fact that we are so much more than what meets the eye in a lot of ways. And that's the beauty of it. And so I'd love to hear about your experience in how do you just move through the world right now as an LGBTQ person, where you have this inner knowing and you've already come to your own awakening that, like, I am just as much a part of the creator of this whole universe as anyone else. I'm pure love. I'm expressing my love. It just happens to be through a gay woman's experience. For me, it
Yeah.
happens to be through a trans man experience. And yet there's this a religious opposition that's very Christian. It's very masculine energy. It's very much, you have to fit into this mold, and if you don't fit into this mold, you are somehow broken. And how do you, as somebody who's gone through the experience of knowing, like an embodied knowing, you've gotten to a point where you know who you are, and
Yeah.
and what would you say to somebody that is maybe like, man, I see so much news right now that's telling me I must be spiritually broken. What do you do in those times, and how do you reconnect?
No, wow, this is definitely a deep question for us. I think how I'm moving through this, I think it's two parts. You have individuals that already was kind of on a spiritual awakening and kind of say, okay, I see something is going on. And then some of us that are not conscious to that and just say, like, what the hell is going on going on in the world? I think for the past 6-7 months, if you're in that space, it's calling you to sit down and really go within, because there's so much negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you turn on the news, it's the pandemic this or COVID that, or the racial injustices. There's just so much
Yeah.
going on that I feel like it becomes heavy on all of us. And when it becomes so heavy, we have the opportunity to kind of go within. And sometimes we don't even know what we're going into. Like, okay, I need to kind of, like, for some of us it's meditation, sometimes it's silence, maybe it's going a walk or something like that. But I need to find deeper. So that's where I feel like my encouragement to all of us would be, like, this is the time that you start to explore what is truly the meaning of life, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing that life is not, physical life in the aspect is not guaranteed. What is truly the meaning of life? What is the true meaning of my life? What is my purpose? For those things, that has helped me keep grounded in this moment. And I think at the beginning of when we were going through the pandemic, especially with the racial injustices, me being a Black woman, I had a hard time because I wanted to, something in me wanted to be birthed and speak out, but I just didn't know what that would look like. So just my encouragement to everyone is just that, don't get discouraged. Utilize this time period, because it's like basically the universe has stopped for
Mm-hmm.
you to get the opportunity to go within and really, like, define God on your own, not what church
Yeah.
has told you. And we're going to start seeing the old church paradigm kind of, come to a dismay and evolve to something new. So I would like, this is the time for us to check in,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious for you, like, how has, going through this, what revelation has come for you, or how have you been moving through this pandemic?
Yeah, like I just want to like name that even before we started this, like me and you and you're on your suggestion, and I love this, that you named like we should have a universal prayer before we even have this conversation, that we should just say like, hey, divine, like, creator here, let's have this conversation, open our hearts, open our minds, like,
Yeah.
let's just allow whatever needs to come through, and like from a place of trust. And that for me, it's remembering the power of like, that I don't have to do it all on my own, that I can really call out to something that's higher than myself, and remembering that, like, I know that to be true, but then in the moment, sometimes it's hard to remember, like, oh, actually, every day and every moment I can return into my own understanding of just asking for help, knowing that there's a
Yeah.
universal, and again, like, it can be a universal just call to the highest good, or the highest source of truth and compassion in the world. It doesn't have to be God. You don't have to call it that. It really is all the same when it comes down to it. And me and you know
Yeah.
that, but I think there's a lot of we can go into this more, but there's a lot of God wounds within the trans and LGBT, Q community, that are from the external, that kind of push people out of rejoining together, knowing that in every moment you can connect to God. And I forget sometimes, so I always have to just know I can pray and know I can connect back. And so I'd like to talk about the stories that are in play, that that keep, what my thing is, like, when we have these conversations, I think there's two groups of people that generally that will kind of maybe watch this and hear something, and hopefully it resonates with everybody. But there'll be the people like me and you who really get it, who really understand. Okay, like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you call it God, it doesn't matter if you call it source, it doesn't matter if you call it love. Like, there's this force right here, and we just have to like name it and claim it, and like tap into it and use it as this kind of overflowing well of life force that's always going to be with us and guide us and take care of us.
Yeah.
And knowing that the universe is limitless and abundant. And then there's also going to be LGBTQ people specifically, and additionally, I think layers, if you have other identities that come with value judgments layered on top of it, that there's people are going to be like, I don't even want to believe in God. God, there's too many people in the church that, the word God is so loaded, and there's
Yeah.
so much weight and momentum that keeps people separate with the narratives of even the word God. So I'll say spirit, I'll say love. It's all the same, but maybe you can talk to your experience of being raised in a church like myself, who maybe had some God wounds that
Yeah.
then you've reconnected, and even now, as we're naming it in this time, people are realizing, like, now more than ever we have to re-tap into that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, no, and that's something big, like God wounds, and it's real. We do have some wounds that we have to kind of heal and walk through. Everybody's process is going to be different, whether if it's like anger, frustration, and like you mentioned earlier, like some people, especially right now, it's
Yeah.
like it's either going to be either I'm running to God or running to a higher power. I need something because this is crazy, or
Yeah.
someone is like, totally running the other way. I don't want to deal with any God. Like it says, fully loaded. I don't want to deal with
Yeah.
church or whatever that may be. And I think for just only my own personal experience is that, initially I grew up through Catholicism, then was a Christian for a very long time, went to a Christian high school. And I think that's where, when you're in those teenage years, you start to really form your identity. And that's where I had most of all the God wounds. And this is how God is depicted, and saying that, hey, God, if you're not straight, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Or you always have to be in constant repentance, and just kind of like, I'm not going to be gay anymore. Or then it started to mature as love the sinner but not the sin.
Right.
all sin is, the same. And it's kind of like, and just feeling like there was a point in time I could just remember I was sitting in the principal's office, and something happened where I had a girlfriend at the time, and the principal found out about it and said, hey, in order for you to stay here, you can't be gay anymore. You can't be gay, or this is not allowed. So in
Yeah.
order to salvage and just the accomplishment of, graduating high school and not disappointing my mom, at that very moment, I had to deny myself. I had to deny my affections. I had to deny who I was.
And denying love, because it's really like
Yeah.
like the feeling is like I'm called to care for this other person, or I'm called to like express myself because it brings me joy to express my gender in this way, or express my love for another person that happens to be the same gender in this way. But it's yeah, there's the denying from the outside other people, not from your internal like connection with your joy, but other people saying you have to deny yourself in order for me to accept you. And it ultimately disconnects us from our own compass of knowing, well, what actually brings me joy, what actually brings me alignment, what actually
Yeah.
brings me fulfillment. And um, and in other conversations we've had, it sounds like when you started to realize that internal compass, when I know I'm aligned, when it's just me and my spirit sitting down,
Mhm.
take everybody else out of it. When I'm here and it's quiet enough and I'm listening deep enough, my compass is what has to be the
Yeah.
base camp barometer of how I move through the world. And you, um, what was the kind of turning point of like where you're like, okay, I deserve more than to shut myself off from myself because of what everybody else thinks?
Yeah. I think for me was when I was just actually, this is, we would say, kind of recent on the spectrum of that I've been gay a long time, but we carry those wounds. And for me, it was like maybe
Yeah.
close to 2 years ago, going through a relationship, and the relationship didn't pan out, but I did notice like it had a pattern to it. And that pattern, I think my partner at the time and myself, we were scared to be who we were. So even though I was openly gay,
Mm.
out and gay, I still had the kind of internalized homophobia. They weren't out, things of that nature. And I just said, no mas. Like after that
Yeah.
happened, I was like, I want to be happy. What's standing in between that happiness? Like,
Because it
and I,
hurt to not show up, and you kind of the pain of like what's working, what's happening right now is no longer, it hurts too much. Something else has to change, and
yeah,
I just got to like move towards letting
yeah,
it be. Yeah.
yeah. So just definitely that I want to be happy, and then just started to change my question to God and
Mm.
higher good is like all the time during the wounds was show me that I shouldn't be gay. But now I ask, never got an answer for that though. Never had an answer
Mm-hmm.
beside of like man saying this is what you shouldn't do. But when I started to ask
Yeah.
God, show me that you love me this way, that's
Mm.
when through art, through meeting other people,
Yeah.
sharing their stories, random Uber drivers, that's when it was like, okay, God, you're telling me I'm okay. I can be happy, and you support me, and just even when I'm embarking this path of helping the queer community, many doors have been opening because of that. So that just kind of comes succinct as what this is the right path. This is where I'm supposed to be going.
Yeah. When you say yes to yourself, so many
Yeah,
doors open, and you just, the momentum builds, and you're on the right path. And um, yeah, it's a saying yes to yourself. And I'm called to talk about, um, you said something and it sparked a memory of like we do ask questions to God as people that have grown up in a church, or have some kind of basis of faith that is tested from the outside. Where, I mean, I don't know about you, but I prayed like in seventh grade. I had a crush on a girl, and I was like, like crying. I was like, God, whatever you got to do to make me not be attracted to girls, make it happen, because I want to serve you, I want to show up in this way, and I'm being told that this is somehow wrong, even though in my heart I know I really care for this other person. And those kind of things is like, I've done a lot of praying about that. And then when I came to know that I was trans at like 19, being a freshman at a Catholic university, I had a lot of messages surrounding me, like, you either gotta conform and not and push all this feelings of like you're a guy down, or you're gonna be living in sin. And really struggled, really asked a lot of questions to God, like, what do you want me to do? Like, do you want me to end my life? Do you want me to move forward? Do you want me to transition? Like, this is not working. I'm not showing up fully as myself. And we pray a lot. We ask these questions. We don't just one day just say, I'm gay, screw God. It's like there is a lot of unraveling and digging and reorganizing and knowing and finding new touch points with God, and clearing out old narratives. And ultimately you get to a place where you realize, okay, it's me and God. I'm good. I'm loved as I am. But can you then also talk about your experience of like the question you said you were asking a question to God of, should I be gay? And you never really got an answer that you shouldn't. But then when you started to say yes to yourself deeper, this is an ongoing thing. Like, this is a lifetime. This is not a thing where like me and you are around the age of 30 and we're not in our teens anymore doing this initial self-discovery. We know who we are, but it's an ongoing accepting, and you get closer to God every time you accept more of yourself. But can you talk more about that, like, question and answer kind of uncovering with God and where you are now?
Yes, and I would love to hear like what was your yes moment too. For me, I think was just uncovering like little things, like when I was just like, I talk about this when I was 28. I went through my Saturn return, and like for me that year was more about purpose. And for anyone, that's like when your whole world shifts. Like your soul's like, okay, we got a job to do. Come on, let's get this job. And I just was like, if I could just like had pulled my clothes off and just say, God, this is who I am, this is what it is. And, like you're giving me this calling to be a life coach, but I'm gay, and people say gay and God don't match. Like, so how does that work? And I think like from then on, like I kind of started seeing opportunities, even though I was still in a Christian environment, did have like supportive organizations that did kind of let me in and like, help serve and things of that nature. So that was kind of one form of it. But I think where the really turning point was like after that post relationship was like, okay, what is going on? I need to come to a knowing. And I think that's the biggest thing with the queer community, is that we really want a knowing in here. We don't want to freaking like watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos, feel good about ourselves for like a day, and then tomorrow like we're all disheveled, right? You want to walk like 2 months, 3 months and know like I'm fine and still have that connection with God. So just like little things, like, I started just back to back to back, started to get Uber drivers that were queer, and they were sharing their stories of their relationship with God. And I'm just sitting in the back seat, like just, okay, getting to the airport, and they're just kind of spouting out their love, their affection for God. And I'm like, God, you're in them. Like you're totally in that person. And just kind of things of like, randomly I'm in the hotel room and I'll like turn on the TV. Like I don't even watch the news, and I'll turn on the TV and it's like a commercial with a father. It was a father that was talking to his daughter that was dressed like a little boy, and he said, I love you. And I was like, God, you're talking to me. So things like that. God has a way of communicating with us, and God communicates to us all differently. God knows you. Like, so like, Ashton, he may have just kind of she communicated to you in the way that it knows how Ashton, would receive that. So I'm just curious to know on your side, like, what was the yes moment, and when did you know, like, okay, for real, you're supporting me. This is where I need to be.
Like, Yeah, on the real, I so I transitioned and really like was very much super like, okay, I'm gonna transition and I'm gonna be like a Christian man, and I'm gonna like be this like Christian advocate for what it means to be a Christian and be trans, and like
Mhm.
that um helped to a point, and I consider myself like a a Christian, and then I'm a yoga teacher, so I see beauty in uh Buddhism and Hinduism, and had been in relationship with somebody who practiced Islam, and did that and found it, and it's beautiful, and to me there's so much beauty in the all of it, and I yeah, when I was struggling about 3.5 years into my transition, where I realized, okay, not another physical change is really gonna
Mm.
bring me any more fulfillment. I have to go find like what is the meaning of life. Like I got the surgery, I
Yeah.
have testosterone, everybody sees me as Ashton. Now I need to like go on this deep like the second arc of the hero's journey. We have this first arc, it's like the body, get transition, go off to the battle. That's the first, but the real journey, the real hero's journey arc is not just that first journey. It's that
Yeah.
there is this deeper inner, second less apparent task. And that is the thing where I had to really figure out, okay, I still feel like shit. Like I still feel really
Yeah.
depressed, really anxious. Okay, I believe in God, and I've always had that foundation. But then, what does it really mean to be happy beyond like another
Yeah.
surgery, beyond testosterone? I stopped testosterone. I ended up just numbing a lot of my emotions, and when I stopped doing that, got really like into the kind of dark night of the soul, where I was like, man,
Yeah.
I need some help. I ended up in the hospital for like depression and anxiety, and had we're really getting into it right now. Where I
Right.
which is this is important. I've actually not talked about it. I'm gonna like we're gonna have this conversation. So
Yeah.
I've
We're gonna
never
have to.
I've never really gone, but the true knowingness of um so yeah, 3.5 years in my transition, well, like 4.5 years, ended up in the hospital for depression, anxiety, and this was after I was like, I'm gonna be super trans, and I'm gonna like, have a YouTube channel and all this, and like really be like
Yeah.
the premier like
Mhm.
version of what it means to be trans or whatever, and um, yeah, that hit a wall big time. Had a lot of shame about, well, shit, I just did so much to like prove to people I'm going to be happy when I get these physical changes,
Yeah.
and had no one to turn to, had no possibility model of what it meant to thrive beyond the physical changes of my body. And yeah, it was in the hospital that there's a mode of treatment called ECT. It's like electroconvulsive therapy, and it sounds
Mhm.
very like scary, and it actually is pretty serious. But it's for people that have
Yeah.
had like untreatable depression, and I had known of it, and I was just kind of at a rock bottom, and
Mhm.
opted to do that treatment. And what they do is they actually induce medically induced seizures, and it breaks up neurons and neural pathways in your brain that are no longer serving you, and you kind of it allows your brain to kind of have some space to grow new neurons and new connections, and it's a kind of like
Mhm.
a plugging your computer, turning it on, turning it back on. It's it is intense, and it was one of the most intense things I've ever experienced in my life, but it was profoundly healing in the moment. Kind of a near death type experience that I wasn't expecting
Ooh.
doing that. But I was the goal and the intention I set was I want to feel better. I want to get this
Yeah.
depression
Yeah.
cleared out. And obviously you don't go into doing something like that unless you really need to,
Yeah.
um, because there's risk involved. But there was a point where I had done like 4 sessions and I had to do 6 of them, and there were as I did more and more, less of the ego was present. Like I was really, it was like 2 weeks every
Yeah.
other day for 2 weeks. It was a lot. And as the it was like being reborn. Like your all those neurons are fresh and open, like being a child again. And there was kind of this moment where I had done all of them, and it was like kind of living my life forward and backwards, and you know living, being reborn in a lot of ways, but there was this deep in clearing out all of that and kind of
Yeah.
turning all that chatter off,
Yeah.
and being very in this debilitated, like could barely feed myself kind of state of, because it's a intensive rebuilding of those synapses in your brain that um I had such a clear channel and clear connection to know, like, truly beyond any doubt, I am a child of God. Every single person is a child of God. Like, when we clear
Mhm.
out the bullshit, clear out the stuff, the
Yeah.
chatter, the narratives that are no longer working, like when we leave this physical body, when we're no longer who we are, like the ego, like I wasn't myself anymore. I was no longer like Ashton at that point in the middle of these treatments.
Yeah.
You it's just love. It's just love, and I could describe it like similar to how a lot of people have experienced near death experiences, where it's just you just know.
Yeah.
There's just no doubt. Like, you're a child of God. I'm a child of God. Everybody's a child of God. Like, I was
Yeah,
walking
watch
around
out.
the
Look.
hospital like that. I was like that person. I was telling all the nurses, "Oh, you're a child of God. You're a child of God." But like, true. I mean, I was a little on another planet, but the essence of what I learned in that
Yeah.
has stayed with me, and that
Mhm.
was like, God, like 3.5 years ago now. But that in that I knew I wanted to become a yoga teacher, help people regulate their nervous system, help people
Oh,
clear the mind, because they were taught us yoga in the hospital and everything. And I went on this journey of like, I need to um, teach people these things, like same calling that you had, where like
yeah.
you kind of grow in your knowingness of God as a queer person, and you're like, okay, the surplus in which I have learned, like with the hero's journey arc, like the second one, like to really be a hero, you can't just go through the first task. You have to
No.
go through the second task, and that's where the surplus comes, where then you
Yeah.
can give it back
Yeah.
and serve people, and the surplus of coming back to the village and is giving that back is
Yeah.
what makes you
Yeah.
a hero. So I became a yoga teacher. You were called to be a coach, and I'm moving in that direction more and more. And yeah, what does the I want to talk about that. A lot of LGBTQ people right now feel
Yeah.
very ungrounded. They feel very much like the world is telling me I am disconnected from God, ultimately disconnected from my purpose,
Yeah.
um, and to be alive, to feel like there's a reason to keep moving in this world that seems so chaotic, is to
Mhm.
have some kind of north star, an anchor that says there's a reason I'm here. I have a calling to be of service in this way. Like, what tools do you think we can give people to help them kind of find their purpose, and in that second hero's journey arc, like really have a surplus, not just survive, not just be a victim of these circumstances, but
Yeah.
thrive, find a purpose, find something to give back, and maybe we can also get into um, talking in terms of you being a Black person at this time,
Yeah.
and the additional layers of stress that puts on people, that that additionally separates them from God, but and spirit and source and the universe, and
Yeah.
how we can clear that out, and get to thriving,
Yeah.
regardless of whether the external situation doesn't change. I know it
Yeah.
is, we know it is, we're holding light and space for that, but
Yeah.
but as things move, like, you feel me? Yeah,
I look,
we
we
just
have
went there, so let's go.
we have that
Yeah.
connection. No, and just want to take a moment and thank you for sharing that, your story about choosing to go through that process,
Mhm.
right?
Trusting.
Um,
Yeah.
trust, yeah, and
Yeah.
trusting and choosing and saying like, I don't necessarily know what all this is going to be about or go through, but um, to that your soul, carried you safely through that, and that you're now, bestowing us with so many gems from that, right? So that was like part of your like purpose, and definitely, like you said, you make another video about that.
Yeah.
And but back to the question at hand around like like purpose and tools and things of that nature. I think, and that's one of the spaces that I have. Like when I started to ask God, like, what am I called to do? It was to help people find and fulfill God's purpose for their life. For me, that has changed because I was, over like it's not God's purpose. It's your soul's purpose. Is you're co-creating that experience with God.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we get into the state, oh, God wants me to do this, and you feel separate.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're understanding that you're not separate, that you are carrying God through you,
Yes.
right? And that you don't have that level of you don't have that separation. You know that you are one. You now are the caretaker of God. We get this perspective that God is always caring for us. But when we reach a level and of an understanding that we are caring for God, we're the caretaker of God through our body temple, through our bodies, through our speech, through our purpose and being stewards of that, then we take a sense of accountability and want to be present here on earth. And I encourage that space for anyone that is going through a sense of like level of depression or saying, okay, I can't, and searching for help, but it's getting to a space of, I want to be present. I chose to be here. What is my contribution? What can I do? I believe that we all have one central purpose. Okay, whether you believe anything different or just, okay, here, there, and, but I believe that we all have one central purpose. And that one central purpose is to love and to be an expression of God. Okay, that's the core element. Now, when we get into a space which is unique to the pandemic, is being able, when we think about purpose, we think about tangible. What am I to do? Sometimes your purpose is just to be.
Yes. Yeah.
To be present, to be present with your kids, to be present. You and I are here. That's that's what the purpose is. But then when you start asking God to help me, like, what is my gifts? What is my talents? What is it that I do uniquely well? And I think this is a great and phenomenal time where everything is going so haywire in the world that you get an opportunity to sit down and say, man, like I like to create art. I like to speak. I want to be an activist, or I want to do this. Take the limitations off of yourself.
Yeah.
So you're having to be an expression of God and you're getting to love through the mechanisms of your gifts and talents. So I would just highly encourage someone. It doesn't have to be like, oh, you're trying to cure world hunger, but what is it that you want?
Right.
That's what your purpose is to kind of come and experience this whole thing called life and just say, what do you want? It's a menu. What do you like? Go out there and do it and try it. And I think it's not like a crazy 10-step process, but like, bringing it back to your love, you're an expression of divine, however you reach that, and the divine gifts and talents within you, because the world needs you. The world needs us,
Yeah.
right? That we're carrying God and we're being able to reach these spaces. So ask yourself, and it's going to come to you. It'll come to you on a mural, a random TV show, and
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I get it. So that helps you when you have purpose and you're able to anchor yourself through that. That in itself is going to push a lot of people through this time. Now, if you're going through this time and you're like, purpose gives you hope, right? When you find a level of purpose, whether it's to be a parent, a person in the community, come on here and do YouTube videos, whatever that is for you, you give hope. So purpose keep you anchored, and purpose allows you to want to be here on earth and give your contribution. So that would be my high encouragement to everyone, is that it's not a big thing. You didn't lose your purpose. It's nothing you have to find, is you just got to go within and ask and trust. But a lot of us are scared to ask, so take the time to do that. This will salvage you through the pandemic and through just rough times. So I hope that was I hope that was,
No, it's great. Yeah.
a little bit, but yeah, that's kind of what I would encourage people at this moment with purpose. That definitely has helped me through mental and emotional breakdowns in hotel rooms when I'm like knocking the pillow down and like, God, I don't know if I could be getting.
Yeah.
And I realized, no, something's more.
Yeah. I say feeling good is feeling God. Like that is my
I love that.
barometer of like, if I'm feeling good, if I'm moving through the world with a sense of peace, even if I don't know what the next right action is, it will present itself in just following the impulses and following the, like, I think that it would feel really good to go on a walk right now. I think that it would feel
Mhm.
really good to, and from a like a deep, you know, place of not just avoiding my feelings, because I think we all need to just own what we're feeling right now and allow it to come up and allow it to
Yeah,
like, allow yourself to, if Wednesday you're feeling like really bad and then Thursday you're feeling like joyful because you're just in a space of gratitude, like allow yourself to ride the waves of like what is going through us right now. And yeah, I think it's would be really valuable to talk about. We could just keep talking. I know we're on like
yeah,
40,
like
40, 43 minutes right now, but there's like a few other things that I think would be good
yeah,
at that there's in the LGBT community, in the place where we overlap, because we're coming from different places in the way that um you know I I am a trans man and you are a queer woman, and you are identify as gay and I identify more as like queer, queer, more like straight, and
mhm,
obviously I'm white and able-bodied, and you're a black woman, and let's talk about the ways in which, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, in the ways in
mhm,
which there's the dissolving of separateness that's happening, that's kicking up a lot of stuff in people's egos, like that the conversations around gender identity and around queer identity and around race identity, all these things are being kind of like kicked up in our ether right now, that all
yeah,
these are all identities that come with value judgments, and how ultimately, even when all those things dissolve away, where we can recognize them for what they are and how they influence people's experiences of themselves and others,
mhm,
that we've had conversations where I know myself to be, yes, I am a trans person, but I, number one, above anything, I am a child of the Creator. I am a divine being here having a temporary human experience, and I have to see the world's firsts through that lens, and so
yeah,
that allows me to then see everyone else as another version of the Creator in this human
yeah,
form, and um, just speak to like the separation based on identity that's dissolving right now. That's bringing
yeah.
up a lot of fear, but is being cleared away. Like, I'd love to hear what you think.
No, no, no. This is yeah, and then definitely, and thank you for allowing this space because the things that we're going through right now. I think for me, just being a Black queer woman, I had to find a way of balance, right, to be able to what does it mean to be Black? What does it mean to be woman? What does it mean to be gay? What does all this mean, right? And as I was going through my spiritual journey, I think one of the biggest pieces of material that helped me kind of understand identity, ego, illusion, all of that was A Course in Miracles, and just also kind of linking myself up with
We haven't talked about this, but we actually,
yeah.
I have a copy too. So this is, I had thought about this earlier today. So, of course, of miracles. Okay, continue,
Yes,
but
yes,
that's cool.
yeah,
We
no,
have
and
now we
we're
know
like
about
getting
that
on
each other.
geeking out
Yeah.
excited.
Okay, we're in it to win
We
it. But
definitely have to do another video
we'll
on
have
this,
to, yes, yeah.
but that book definitely I would encourage anyone. It's not. It may have like an undertone of a Christianity, but it's very universal. But it really, when you read it, I encourage you to read it. It starts to resonate in your soul, and it starts to make sense, and it has a level of peace. And I think one of the biggest pieces of it, the one that just like the aha light bulb went off, is that this whole idea of separateness. I am is separate from God. But when we're understanding that we are one with God, it's like, okay. And I'm a big believer of just getting to the root of something. So like when we
Mm.
look out in the world and especially during like this pandemic, it's like you said, everything is coming up in the ether, like queer issues, racial issues, despair, all these different things, with all these different identities, is to show us that we are not that. And this is where I had to kind of find a balance of being able to take the labels off and be able to put them back on. So at the beginning for me, it was more of I am like yourself, I am God. I'm an expression of God. I am oneness. That is truly who we are. We only a spiritual being having a human experience, right? We've chosen to come in this world.
Yeah.
And we've chosen to come to the parents. We've come and chose to be a Black gay woman. Ashton chose to be a white trans man in this world, in this generation. You have choice. That's another thing. You have choice. And so, like, understanding that I'm a spirit and everything else come after, right? So I had to take off those labels that I'm not Black, I'm not gay, I'm not, my ethnicity, I'm not this, I'm not that. That in itself felt uncomfortable, but it was like the ego was like running rage, but I had to take all of these identities because it was weighing me down, because you start getting into a space of what does it mean to be that. Then into, for me, was moving into a space of, okay, I chose this life, I'm human, let me honor and celebrate it. So what does it mean to be a Black person, especially in this generation? How can I embrace that? How can I love it? How can I love the culture? How can I love myself being this ethnicity, right? What does it mean for me to be queer, be gay, honor the label, honor, celebrate it. You have the choice to do that. But I think it's all of the stuff that's coming up is to bring so much pressure that a person says, I'm not all of this. I'm not. So it could push you to who you really are. We're having an identity crisis. We see ourselves so much as separate. Racism just takes on the word of separateness and fear. So it has been, challenging still in the human experience to see what's going on in the news and what's going on in my own community. But it's having a consolation of knowing at the end of the day that what you truly are, and then that gives you the torch, a part of your human experience of how can you support and how can you help. If you're
Yeah. And
help, how can you help the Black community? How can you help the queer community? How do you now take the identity that God is traveling all these different identities and be able to bring humanity to a space of love and a common good, right? So that's
yeah.
just kind of our thought process on it.
And it's not that we aren't experience. It's not like we're like just ignoring that we experience the world through these identities, because we're not just like, sticking our head in the sand like, oh, I'm not trans and I don't have to actually deal with all the what that really means to be trans in this world. It's untethering the narratives internally that say I am less than because I am all these things, and
Mhm.
claiming this. We have choice in the the story that we tell about it. That's where the choice comes. It's not necessarily that we have choice that people are going to be transphobic or be racist or anything. They're going to do what they're going to do, and hopefully we can hold light and space, and that's continuing to shift. But we have, where we take our power back is where we reclaim the fact that, I actually do have a sense of agency, and I actually am glad that I have a sense of agency, that I get to choose the story that I tell about it. And for me and you, our story, we have a lot of empowerment behind the fact that we say we're a spiritual being having a temporary human experience. We, before we came into this physical body, chose to be all of these identities because they were going to teach us the exact lesson that we needed to learn to
Yeah.
advance our soul at this time, and we signed up for this. And that yeah, we're not separate based on identities. They do it's not that like, oh, I'm colorblind, or oh, I don't see gender. It's like
Yeah.
those things exist. They hold back in. We're not saying that. So anybody listening, like, we're just saying that those things are very real and they influence our experience, but we have a choice on how we react to those experiences, what
Yeah.
narratives we internalize about those experience, and if it resonates, to just own and experience a narrative about yourself that you're first like a beloved child of the universe. You are
Yeah.
pure love, and the things that cause the most pressure in your existence, like, my trans identity has caused me to be pushed up against other people's perception of me, but it tests me to remind me and mirror
Hmm.
back to me, like, what inside me needs to remember that I am a child of God. Like,
Yeah.
because then it doesn't affect me as much when I know my truth and stand in that. And yeah, I think at I think we're like a little over, we're probably like 47
Yeah.
minutes here. This is so far like so beautiful, and we'll definitely have to do a part 2 to it. But just to get a touchstone for people and to just start opening these conversations up and just know that there are LGBTQ people that are out here having these conversations, that are holding space, that are here to support you and mentor you and care about what, you know, you're doing in this world, and wanting you to know that there's possibility models for you to be out in this world to not just survive or be a victim of these circumstances, but really thrive in your queer identity. And yeah, where can people get in touch with you if they want to know more about what you're doing, to be coached by you, if they're called to that, to hear more about the content that you're creating on your Instagram and stuff like that? What can people do to get in follow more what you're doing?
Yes, yes. So where people can find me and where I, spend a lot of my energy is on Instagram. So I have my tag here, I am underscore Kalyela J. So that's where you can always send me a DM, a message, follow content. But definitely, like I said, my heart is to, in essence, help the queer community um, be able to embrace the identity, but bridge the spirituality in your sexuality. So if that resonates with you, if you're like, man, I've gone through religious oppression, or I'm going through, struggling, like don't feel, and I know we had conversations about this, but purpose worthiness, like I don't feel
Yeah.
worthy of that. I just need help. I would love extend yourself to me and extend myself to you. Would love to coach you and take you through that process of healing, right? So that you could go to sleep at night and have a knowing and a peace in your heart that, man, okay, it's still there. God loves me. It didn't run away, because that's the biggest fear for us. So would love to connect with you in that way.
Beautiful. Yeah, and we'll definitely be having more conversations like this. I love that we are peer mentors for each other in this way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess before we leave, I would love to wrap up with a prayer to just send out to people. If you'd like to lead us in that, just knowing anybody listening to this, that in every moment we can make a choice to return back to love, and in this time we just have to remember to tap into love and the power of setting an intention, and your thoughts create things. So let's hold the vision of the world that we want to create, and let's send out some good vibes about and prayers, and maybe lead us in a prayer about like the vision of the world that we're co-creating as times change. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. And thank you, Ashley, for holding the space for all of us here. So, as we go to God within, universe, divine, whatever you may reach and call a higher power, we ask you to go within. And just, God, we thank you for just creating the space today to just have this conversation, this open conversation about, spirituality and sexuality, and God, to understand you a lot better so that we can understand ourselves a lot better, God. We just ask you to just continue to penetrate the hearts, open the ears and the minds that need this message. Ashton and I know firsthand of what it is to mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually be challenged in wanting a piecing and knowing that we can be who we are here on earth and be able to help in our calling and serving to help others. And we want to share that with the rest of our community here, that they know that they are loved by you, that they have peace, and that you are directing them in their purpose, and that most of all, God, that you're wanting to co-create their life with them, right? Co-create their experience, their happiness, their joy, in a peace and knowing. So God, we just know that we're in the middle of a pandemic. We may not all understand what's maybe going on, and some of us do have a sense of direction of that, but to just kind of give us encouragement and purpose throughout this whole process. So to future open conversations, and thanks again for the space. We come to you and we thank you, and so it is.
And so it is. Yeah. Thank you again, Coach K. We will um, just send light out to you. Every single person watching this, we're sending you so much love, so much light, and know that things, as I like to say, it's like cleaning your room. You start, yeah, and then it looks a little bit worse,
Yes.
45 minutes into it, and then it eventually, as you smell a few dirty socks and put them in, you have to do the work. And what's happening right now is like we're just in the process of clearing stuff out. Things are getting better, and light is coming out of the planet. We're doing this. We're having vision. So continue to hold a vision every single day of the world that you
Yeah.
want to see. Don't get bogged down by the fear. The fear is an illusion. The love is real. And there's people out here shining light. And yeah, so stay awesome, and thank you again, Kay. And we'll have more conversations like this.
All right. Thank you, Ashton, and thank
Yep.
you all. All right,
Have a good
guys.
one.
You
Bye.
too.